Hey, gun people! Man, this is a great case. I love I love things like this because it just opens so many doors, and there's no right and wrong answer. And for somebody that's not a cop and doesn't deal with the absurdity of some legal rulings, sometime cases like this just really intrigue me on how it's going to turn out. So, a cop uses a dead man's finger in an attempt to unlock his phone. And as I read through the story, there's a multitude of legal and rights issues. Now, on first read, should government be able to use your finger after you're dead to unlock your phone? My first response is, look, government shouldn't be doing anything without probable cause and without a warrant, and unless there's an exigency. you know, Remember, an exigency is something to prevent destruction of evidence, to save life. Public safety exception comes into play. If someone's in danger, if a child's in danger, I don't necessarily have to waste time getting a warrant. If I think there's something that I can catch or find a kid quicker, I can go ahead and act immediately because the child's life's in danger. So that would be an exigency. And I talk about exigency in other issues, like you up to a house and you hear a woman screaming inside, help, help. And you don't have a warrant, you don't have consent, but to preserve life, you can kick the door, enter without a warrant in order to preserve life. That's another exigency. So when a cop uses a dead man's finger for a phone, is there an exigency that is too quick for him to get a warrant? Now, these cops didn't get a warrant, and I think that's where they messed up. If they had got a warrant, I would be a little more okay with this. Now, remember, a warrant, the whole purpose of it is so cops aren't out there, government, because cops are government, so cops aren't out there making up laws and figuring out ways to circumvent the system to get what they want. And sometimes cops do this for good reason, to catch bad guys, but it's still wrong. So these two cops, according to this story, um, Largo detectives did a funeral home. What they did at a funeral home was legal. I don't necessarily think it was legal, but the courts will have to figure it out, and we'll talk about whether it was legal or not. Okay, let's see. I felt so disrespected and violated. So this is the um, Ken. I don't remember. Let's see. Victoria Lewis shot and killed. So I'm not sure how she's connected to the guy that was shot and killed, but she feels violated. I don't think her rights matter. Remember, in the eyes of the law, you have to have what's called standing, and standing is you have to have a right first to challenge what the government is doing. I can't go challenge what the government did to you because I don't have standing. You have to challenge what the government does to you. So in this case, the dead man would have to challenge what the government is doing, which opens up another box because do dead people have rights to privacy? The courts have ruled in other cases that they don't have a privacy right. Privacy right is for the living. Once you're dead, you don't have rights. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that either. I think you have a right on how you're buried, how you're disposed of, what your will is. But a right to privacy, the courts have kind of cited that, you don't have rights to privacy. So that's one issue on whether or not it was legal. If you don't have rights, then technically when you're dead, cops can do anything they want. They can take pictures with you, they can pose with you, they can set you up in funny things, they can take your clothes, they can take your... Now, people are going to argue, no. You do have a right to keep your property because that transfers to your next of kin or who you willed the property to. So this is just a complex, all kind of legal issues going in. But I think what the cops did was smart, and they were thinking ahead, and they were legal maneuvering, trying to figure out, hey, you know what? If a dead person doesn't have rights, we need to get in his phone. We got his body. we can't get in his phone without his fingerprint. We'll just go to the morgue and stick his finger on the phone and unlock it. Now, it didn't work, so that sets up another problem. So this case may not go, because had it worked and they got evidence, then the evidence could be looked at as tainted or not getting or wasn't, found within the course of the law. Therefore, the courts could suppress that evidence for anyone that it was used against. The attorney would order, hey, you're using evidence that was taken in the wrong means, therefore you can't use it. So even if it would have opened it, you would still have suppression issues on whether or not the guy has privacy issues. Let's see. 28, day 2, the detective showed up with Philip's phone. So they brought his phone to the funeral home. They were taken to the corpse, and then they tried to unlock the phone with the body's hand using the fingerprint sensor. Now, I'm not sure why this didn't work. I don't know how. I'm not technical on how a fingerprint sensor works, whether it picks up electrical charges or it has to be alive. I might have tried to, could they have hooked a battery, a little 9-volt, to the guy's finger, which would have put enough charge to make the phone reader think that the person was alive, and then got the fingerprint to work and unlock the phone. Because remember, there's evidence on the phone, and government can't get it without the person's fingerprint. If they try to get it on the iPhone, it erases all your data. And the government has already gone after Apple, saying you have to give us a back door, and Apple said no, which I agree with. And government so far has lost that battle, so we're told. I'm not sure if we've got the full scoop or if there is a back door. But anyway, so were they wrong by going to the morgue and getting his fingerprint? I'm not sure. I know people are going to say, how could you, about freedom? And look, the guy's dead. If they want his fingerprint, what do they want the evidence for? They can't really use the evidence. And that's another issue that comes up, is self-incrimination. We're not required to give evidence against ourselves. And if they use his finger against his will, but he doesn't have will because he's dead, and then they get evidence used against him, but they can't use it against him because he's dead, but they could use it against his name, or they could use it against him and his co-conspirators and other people because they took it from him illegally. So therefore, could they convict anybody on the evidence they get if the evidence is deemed it wasn't right when you got it? So this is just a total bucket of worms. I think it's interesting on how it's going to play out. I'm kind of, I think one court, it ruled already that they shouldn't have. Let's see. Picked his hands. The lieutenant said that unsuccessful attempts to preserve the data on a phone aid in the investigation. I mean, I wonder if they're going to charge the dead guy with obstructing investigation because his finger didn't work. Rick, they can't charge a dead guy. He's already, all right, whatever. Again, that's not going to be an issue, but let's see. Philip's death, separate inquiry into drugs. They probably want, people that use drugs, if he's selling drugs, they probably want to get the drug history or who sold him drugs or where is he getting a supply or how he's connected. There's all kind of good evidence on a phone, and, a good detective isn't going to want to lose that evidence. But the courts should be preserving the Constitution and saying, hey, even though we can get something good, we have to hold government in check. So my gut is they probably shouldn't do it without a warrant. And if they get a warrant, let's see, said the detectives think they would need a warrant. Oh, they didn't think they need a warrant because there's no expectation of privacy of the death. So technically they're right. So the detectives are using the law to benefit them, saying, hey, the guy's dead. He doesn't have an expectation of privacy. Therefore, we don't need a warrant to go get his finger. I think it would have been very easy to get a warrant. I mean, you go to a judge, you write your probable cause statement. Your Honor, this person was in drug and gave the activity. He was under the influence of drugs. We think he was involved in a larger scheme that's an ongoing investigation to catch so-and-so. When the officers tried to arrest him, he was in a shootout. He resisted. He tried to go over the officer's gun. He was killed. The officer shot and killed him, and he was killed. After he was dead, we knew there was evidence on the phone, and we used his finger, or we would like to use his finger. can we use his finger to get the information? And the judge would have probably went, sure. Guy's dead, doesn't have an expectation of privacy. He really doesn't have any right to challenge. He doesn't have standing because he's not alive, although he probably has standing, but who's going to argue for him because he has nothing to win or lose? So the courts would have probably gave him a warrant, and then that would have switched all the, proving and who was wrong and right to the courts. That's why I tell cops, man, most cops just don't want to do warrants. They're kind of complex when you don't understand them. There's a lot of legalities. There's a pretty big learning curve, and unless you do, 50, 100, get into the hundreds, they're kind of a pain. And there's always problems, and you got to run it through the DA, and you got to run it through this person, and then you left this out, and then the judge wants to sign it, and then you got to find a judge, and this judge may not like it, and this judge may say, well, if you'll get more info, I'll sign it. So a lot of people are cops. They're kind of like, man, a warrant's just one of those gray areas that I don't want to step in. Like I said, I'd probably say 98% of cops never write a warrant in their career. There's a very small percentage that write warrants, and the ones that do write them, usually other cops always go to them and get them to write them because they have it down. But again, this would have been an easy warrant. I think the cops should have got a warrant. They would have been on better ground. I don't think the cops are looking at anything wrong for getting the body and the finger. There's not going to be a crime because, they're going to claim, hey, we were in the course of an investigation. We were in the course of our duties. We didn't go over there for kicks. We were just trying to get his fingerprint. He was laying in a casket. It was very non-intrusive. Now, if they started cutting his chest open to take a pacemaker out because the serial number would connect, the serial number was somehow stolen or what. Now, if they started doing that, I think the courts would absolutely say, no, we're not giving you a warrant. He's dead. Although the courts will give warrants to take a body out of the ground if we think there's evidence. The guy's buried. He's been buried. I mean, as much as a year, several years later. If you think there's DNA evidence in that corpse, then you can get a warrant to pull the body and do your test. Again, the courts are like, the guy's dead. He really doesn't have an expectation of privacy. Who are we hurting? Whose rights are we intruding on? Of course, the family and other people that may be around will say, you're invading on my rights. It's my job to look after them as long as I'm alive. I want to bury him. I take care of the casket. I don't want him pulled out. It's intrusive. Then they'll pull the religious card. Oh my God, you're going to mess up. He was in heaven, and if you dig him out, it'll pull him out of heaven. Or if he's in hell, it may make his hell worse. I mean, there'll be all kind of angles on why you shouldn't do that. But the law is pretty clear on that, and it's done fairly regularly. I mean, it's not that easy, but it can be done. Let's see. What was some other issues that came up in there? Corporate. The office touched on legal, ethical. Now, ethical, ethics in the law. Give me a break. There ain't no such thing as ethical law. That's oxymoron. The ethics in the law is how can I manipulate it? How can I work within the law? How can I get what I want by not violating the law clearly so I can't be charged? That's what ethics is in the law. Making it a new challenge for police. We have been unlocking phones. We can't remember having unlocked a phone in this faction. The fact that it says we can't remember kind of makes it fishy. If I was a cop on scene and a guy just died, and I had a phone, and I knew there was either outstanding suspects or there was a missing victim or a missing child, and he had just died, I would reach down, grab his finger, and put it on the phone and open the phone. Would I be wrong? I don't know. I would claim exigency. I don't want his finger to go cold. I don't want his body to be too cold because then it wouldn't work. If I can get the phone open now, I can preserve the evidence, and then I can go get a warrant. And that's how I would justify an exigency to pick up a dead person that was just dead that I needed to get in the phone. Is that right or wrong? I mean, some people are going to say, no, I'm a bootleg jackhammer cop, whatever. Let's see. Several court rulings weighed on privacy on phones. They're increasingly becoming mini computers holding trove of confidential information. That, to me, is more reason why government should have to go through more hoops to get into it. I mean, if they can take your finger when you're dead and open your phone, why can't they go to your house after you're dead and pick your lock to your safe and go in your safe with no problem. Now, some would argue what they can, and on most homicides, we always search the victim's house immediately. We get a warrant and go in, and so we can help find out who killed him, how he was killed, etc. But again, I guess the big question is, 2014 Supreme Court ruled warrantless searches of cell phones during arrest are unconstitutional, which is a good reason. For a while there, cops, I think, could just grab your phone and force you to look at it and put you in jail if you didn't give the password. And now, a court can always hold you in contempt for any reason, which I think is a bull crap law, and it shouldn't be in there. It's funny that you can go in a courtroom and a judge can throw you in jail with no due process, no right to an attorney, no charging, no review. A judge can just say, you know what? I hold you in contempt. You're going to jail till I say you can come out. And they do it all the time, especially with witnesses who refuse to give information. If you're deemed a primary witness or something, and you say I don't want to answer, and you refuse to answer, the judge can throw you in jail until you answer, and he can keep you there for weeks or months or years. It's an absolutely outrageous law. Doesn't get any publicity. It's wrong. Judges are just lawyers with freaking black robes, and for them to have the ability to totally ignore the Constitution and everything, say, you know what, I hold you in contempt. I don't like your attitude. You were chewing gum. You're going to jail. No due process. No right to attorney. No right to a hearing. You just go to jail because I say so, because I'm holding you in contempt. I mean, you talk about a slap in the face to the Constitution. A contempt charge for a judge is absolutely outrageous. And I've seen judges abuse it horribly. All right. Let's see. Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search. Let's see. A phone from a bystander filming a car violated the Fourth Amendment's protections. I didn't read that. Florida had its own run-in the appeals court. A Marin County Sheriff's deputy who took a phone from a bystander photographing and filming a car crash violated the bystander's Fourth Amendment protection. I agree with that. If I'm a third-party citizen, I'm filming, the cops shouldn't be able to seize my phone. However, from a cop's perspective, if I know there's evidence and I may lose that evidence, I'm absolutely within a law to seize that evidence under exigency to preserve it. So the cop seizing this, as he said, look, I wanted to get the film because there was an accident, somebody died, and it was going to prove, the case or give me information. So I didn't want that evidence destroyed, so I seized the phone to preserve it until I could get a warrant. I think he'd be okay with that. I'm not sure on the circumstances to this Marin County Sheriff deputy where the Fourth Amendment protections unreasonable search, where the court ruled on that. So I'm not sure what the Florida ruling was on that. I'll look it up, maybe try to put it in here if I can find it. When it comes to access a phone, the situation becomes more complicated. It really does. You probably get into your phone one of two ways, entering a password or pressing a finger on a sensor. And on my iPhone, they made me activate. I didn't like using a finger because it's a pain. If it's wet, if it's not clean, if your finger's dirty in any way, it won't read your finger, and it's a pain in the butt. And it made me activate it to where that's the only way I can do it unless I enter a code. So the iPhone kind of makes you do the sensor, and it's good that it'll protect it because if you put in the wrong code 5 times, it erases all your data. And that's what the government was trying to get Apple to give them. Hey, we need a way around this, and you have to give it to us. And the courts ruled, no, they don't. And that's a good ruling, and I agree with that. I know it's going to sound to some people that, well, Rick, you're agreeing that they shouldn't be forced to give it to them, but now you're saying you can go take a dead person's finger. Under certain circumstances, I do think that's a pretty low intrusive thing. You're already dead. If the evidence will help find somebody or protect someone's life or to stop somebody, I mean, think about it. We catch a terrorist. He gets in a shootout. We know he knows the location of a nuclear weapon that's going to blow up in the middle of a city, and there's a nuclear bomb in the middle of a city, and all we have to do is use the guy's finger to open his phone, and we'll probably find out where the bomb's at. Should the dead person have a right not to have his finger put on his phone and let millions of people die? To me, that's unreasonable. And the courts always view things on a reasonable standard. And to be honest, if it was against the law and I was in that situation, I would violate the law, use his damn finger to find the weapon. And that's just me. And I would suffer the consequences afterwards and say, whatever. But, when you get cops out there making their own rules and saying, I'm going to violate the law when I want to, that's not always a good thing. Everybody thinks it's a good thing when they do it because they think they're going to be okay. And I think it's a good thing when I would do it because I think I would be justified. But it's still against the law. It's still wrong. Cops take an oath to obey the law and protect the Constitution. So this is just a great convoluted case to me that I'm really interested on how it's going to turn out, because the person with the best argument is going to win. When they go to court, it's going to be about who comes up with the best argument, who can make it sound more reasonable. And again, on this case, I think what's going to come into play is, what were you trying to achieve when you took, what are you looking for on the phone? When you took his finger, what evidence exactly were you looking for? Because if you do a warrant, you have to put very specific what you're looking for. I can't say in a warrant, I'd like a warrant to search your phone for anything that might help my investigation. Technically, you can't say that. I have to say exactly what I'm looking for. I want a warrant to search his phone to look for, one, the name of other co-conspirators that contributed to this man's death that could possibly help in locating another person that got away. Two, I want to look for any pay and owe sheets that was used for buying and selling drugs, with possible identifying information of those who sold the drugs or who he's receiving drugs from. Three, I'm looking for, any photographs that would identify other people involved in his criminal activity of whatever the crime is. So a warrant has to be very specific, whereas when I'm just out there doing it, I don't have to do that. I can just take his finger, put it on there, and I got the information. Then I can use what I want. Kind of like what the court's allowing them to do to Trump. They let him raid his lawyer's office and said, you know what? We know that there's attorney-client privilege, and we know you should have a right to privacy, and we know that this is a very specific privilege between attorney-client, but you know what? Because you're Trump and we don't like you, we're going to allow the government to see everything in your attorney's office, and then you guys have to decide together whether or not it's attorney-client privilege. Well, you can't unring a bell. When you show a prosecutor something, let's say they find something in there that Trump signed a letter saying, hey, I'm sorry I beat you up, and I'm sorry you have my kid, and I'm sorry that I didn't pay child support. And they determine that that's attorney-client privilege. The government knows that now. Now the government is going to use that to either open another investigation or to find that by other means and say, you know what? We didn't use what we saw. We gave it to them. We didn't use it. Once you see it, you're going to use it. And that's why it's such a bad ruling to allow the government to see that attorney-client privilege stuff. I mean, it is such a people, and it's normally the left who has no idea of freedom, because everything the left does is anti-freedom and steals freedoms and promotes socialism and communism. Just a really bad ruling. Anyway, I thought this was a very interesting case. A lot of people will be like, I don't really give a crap, but this is going to determine whether or not you have rights when you die. Me personally, when I die, I don't really care. Whatever. Do what you got to do. Now, if I die and I had some secret that I didn't want someone else to pay for, or I didn't want someone else to know, and they violated that and got that information, and someone else suffered because they used me after I was dead, I would probably have a problem with that, but I'm dead. So, Pandora's box. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Anyway, I thought it was an interesting case. Figured I'd share some kind of perspectives. Most people are going to read this and be like, they'll have a gut reaction. Oh, no, man, they violated the guy's funeral. Oh, no, the people are pissed off because they went in there. That's wrong. Cops shouldn't have done that. Government's wrong. No way. Man, this could be an important issue later down on something really important. And if the courts make a really broad brush ruling on this and say, absolutely not, no way, that could cost a lot of lives in the future. And that's not a good thing. All right, we'll go ahead and end that there. Thought this was a great case.